record on this.
All right.
Take it away, Allison, and tell us about the Sunshine Home Share, and we will share this later on the Golden United website.
Oh, whoops. Oops. Okay, and let me try to get, sorry, I'm gonna hide your faces over.
Take two.
Over in the corner.
Allison Jakovsky is going to present to us about Sunshine Home Share. Take it away, Allison.
Okay, and I brought the really quick version of our PowerPoint. And I also want to say, I mean, you all are professors and you've probably are zoomed out as well. I'm really happy to make this more of a discussion than a presentation. So I will certainly leave time and feel free to jump in as I go through this. So like I was saying, Sunshine really came from two issues that we saw going on in the community. The first one are the challenges that come with aging in place, which is what you were just talking about, right? The cost of, it came up in earlier discussion, the Social Security not even being near enough to get close to covering rent, and also the effects of loneliness and isolation. So when we look at aging in place, some of the things that we know that are happening is that the cost of in-home services. So if we're going to use the figure 1,500, right, as the average Social Security, if that person would need to call and get help with bathing and dressing or any kind of personal care, and you pick up the phone and you call an agency, we're looking at about $28 an hour, right? So it doesn't take a whole lot of math skills to realize that at $28 an hour, at $1,500 a month, it just isn't going to happen. The other thing that I heard you all talking about was social isolation. I really think that one of the things that the pandemic kind of brought to light, in the field of gerontology, we always know that social isolation is an issue. We know that loneliness and isolation impacts health. It impacts mental health and physical health. It is really, and I believe that it was one of the Surgeon Generals that actually at some point made isolation and loneliness an epidemic. And so what I think that we saw with the pandemic is we saw that, all of a sudden people were having to stay at home, and we saw this need for the food delivery and but those needs were there before. And I really think it just helped highlight how severe this issue is in our communities. The other thing that we know is that taking care of older adults, your loved ones, your parents, your aunts, your uncles, your family members, your neighbors, really places a burden on our society for caregivers. They miss work at exorbitant rates. It costs families upwards of $6,000 a year to be a caregiver. And so that role that we are facing of needing to take care of our older adults as they age is really placing strain upon our families. And the other thing that I think you all alluded to as well in our conversation is rising property taxes, right? One of the things that we're seeing with our homeowners is they've lived in their house for 30 years, 40 years. They bought it for $50,000, $60,000. It's now worth $600,000, and they have to figure out how to pay those property taxes. So going back to that math, right? If the average Social Security is a little over $1,500, and you are paying property taxes on a house that's worth $600,000, it is a mathematical equation that just doesn't add up, right? And so There are many other factors that go into aging in place, but certainly those are some of the biggest challenges. So then we also started looking at the housing issue, and more specifically, the affordable housing issue. So as we've already talked about, the cost of one bedroom house is close to, well, a one bedroom apartment is close to $1,500, right? Spending 90% of your Social Security on rent. We know that the lack of affordable housing is exponential. I know Golden has built some new affordable housing buildings in recent years. One thing that I would say about the tax credit buildings that are being built is they do not meet the needs of the lowest of low income seniors. They still don't qualify for those buildings. So when you start to look at that, a lot of our government HUD buildings are now becoming older, and their limitations are starting to expire. We're starting to see fewer and fewer HUD buildings, and HUD is the one that where you come in at 30% of your income. Tax credits don't work that way. The average senior building is still sitting with about a 2-year wait list. Some places it's as long as 4. We've made a little bit of movement on that. I think that buildings started to clean up their lists, and people had their names on all these buildings. And so as they've started to get housed, we've seen it move a little bit faster, but still talking about 2 years. Evictions, right? Once you have an eviction on your record, you cannot rent an apartment. I think that that is one of the reasons that the eviction, the eviction moratorium, I'm sure that you've heard, part of the reason that they have, kept postponing it is really at this point due to the fact that we need to get the money into people's hands, right? That's exactly what you all were saying. At this point, I don't think it's not that the money's not there and the jobs aren't there. It's that we need to get people caught up, because once they have an eviction on their record, we are going to be creating an enormous homeless problem that's already bigger than what we have. Because even if people do get caught up and they do have a job, once they have that eviction on their record, they're not going to be able to rent an apartment. And bad credit, same thing. If you've got really lousy credit, it is really hard to rent an apartment. So those are some of the reasons that we really decided to tackle this problem with some innovative solutions. So home sharing. So the idea of our home sharing program, and again, there are 64 nonprofit home share programs across the country. A lot of them, the model is the same, but some of them are set up like ours and some of them are set up a little bit differently. For the purposes of our program, because it really is that sort of joint mission of aging in community and helping seniors age in place, and also that ability to create affordable housing, for our program, the homeowner has to be over 55. We have had recently a few younger home providers, but one has MS, right? They're really struggling with some health issues that really make the need for our supportive services really important for their matching process. So on one side, we have someone 55 and older, and they are reaching out to us for a million different reasons, right? I just need income, or I could use some snow shoveling or yard work, or I could use rides to the doctors or meals, or I would love somebody that would like to do some social things, right? They are coming at this reason that they want a home share, because, and 95% of the time it's also because they need money. On the other side, we have all of these people coming in who need affordable housing. And they say, I can drive, I could cook, I could, mow the lawn, I can pay this much money. I want to live in this part of town. I have a cat. And it is a very slow, safe, thoughtful process that brings people together in a mutually beneficial relationship. And that is really, really, really key, because when the match doesn't feel like it's a win-win on both sides, it never works. So we are working really hard to make sure that the match feels beneficial.
Can I jump in with
questions about those two slides?
I have one.
Sure.
How do you ensure that this relationship is beneficial in the long term? Is that something that you follow up on?
Yeah, hold on.
Okay, cool.
Next slide. So we are a social work home sharing program, right? You can go on Craigslist, you can go on silvernest.com, you can go on Roomster, and there are a million online platforms that you create a profile, you put in what you're looking for, it spits out potential people, and there is nobody there to help with the process, right? That is an online platform. So a social work model home sharing program is unique in that it starts with a comprehensive social work intake, which means that if you own the home, we are going out to your house. And if you are what we call the home seeker, you are coming to our office and we are spending a couple hours getting to know you. And that's where we're really talking about likes and dislikes and values and what's important to you and all of those things. And we're also talking about substance abuse, and we're talking about mental health history. And if you share that you struggle with mental health, we're going to ask if you're taking your medications and you're working with a therapist, right? We are really trying to screen and figure out what is it that makes you tick and what's important to you. And we're doing that on both sides. So then what we're doing is we then come together as a team every week and we literally hash out, who'd you talk to? What do you think? Oh, that wouldn't work. They have a dog and this one's got a dog allergy, right? We are really kind of going case by case on everyone that we saw and who can be potential introductions. Once we kind of go through that, we are calling both sides and we're saying, hey, would you like to meet Mary? Mary, would you like to meet Jane? Here's a little bit about them. And then we are there when they meet for the first time. And there is always a social worker present when we meet. And that's where we come with a list of questions and we support them interviewing each other. So then after the interview, we tell everybody, nobody does anything today, right? No decisions are being made. And we're going to check in with you tomorrow because we want people to be able to say no, right? If it doesn't work, you need to be able to say, I don't think this was the right fit for me. And people just don't feel as comfortable doing that face to face. So once they meet and then we check back in, if they decide to meet again, that's when we're pulling all the background checks. We are checking references and we're telling them, bring in your family, bring in someone who knows you. You want to have people meet this other person and see what they think. After they meet several times, they will call us and they'll say, we think we're ready to do the 2-week trial. And a 2-week trial is where the person who's looking to potentially live there comes with a really small suitcase, right? And it is just that. It is just a test. We're going to see how it goes. We're going to see how it feels. If they start calling us a couple days into the trial match, usually we're like, this probably isn't the right fit for you, right? It's not probably worth moving forward. So once they get through the trial match If that is a go, then the person who gives their 30-day notice, if that's what's going on, sometimes it kind of just moves into living together. But one of the things that we're always talking about with the home seeker is what's your plan B, right? If this doesn't work, where are you going to go? So we're constantly talking about that, right? What's going to happen if this match ends? So they move in. We do the living together contract, which is not a lease, but it really is what space in the kitchen and what time does it have to be quiet? And when does the trash go out? And what does the service exchange look like? Are we going to have meals once a week just to check in? Are we going to grocery shop together? Are we going to split groceries, right? All of those things, so that when the match is made, all the expectations are very, very clear. After that, we are coming out every quarter just to make sure everything's going okay. And then our staff is certainly available to come out and mediate. So comes in certain way. I can't even tell you what mediation looked like during COVID, right? We probably doubled our amount of care management that our matches required, right? They came in, one person was working all day, one person was home, all of a sudden everybody's home all day. The older person may not be able to go to the grocery store, the service exchange looks different, right? So the care management needs really looked different during COVID, especially when we were sort of on that lockdown part. And then we are there to support an exit plan, right? Home sharing matches don't last forever. We have some that have been running almost as long as we've been up and running. And we have some that ended within 6 months, right? And so we are there to support the exit plan if that's what needs to happen. Some of the things that are really important about our social work model organization is we're staffed by geriatric social workers. Everybody's a master's level geriatric social worker or with a specialty in affordable housing. This has a lot of clinical skill that goes into getting to that match. The goal is that the matches are long lasting. And by long lasting, we ask people to commit to at least 6 months, if not a year. If that just isn't working, it's okay, but it's not short term. So when people call us and they say, you know, I'm looking for housing, I just need something for 3 months. It takes to get through this process, start to finish. And that's just assuming that we even have someone for you to meet right out the get-go. It takes about 8 weeks to get through the process. So we don't want people spending 8 weeks in a trial and getting going, and then 3 months later it's over. So we're really encouraging people, give this a go if you're going to try it. The other thing that we offer in our program is what we call financial social work. And financial social work really is that idea that if people are going to make changes in their money behaviors, that you really have to dig into what's causing you to behave the way you do with money. And it's really interesting, right? People have deep-rooted patterns of behavior, and home sharing is actually a really great way for people to start to either save, right? I mean, all of a sudden you're going from $1,500 a month average rent to $400, right? That's a great opportunity to use that as a pathway for the future, or to think about setting goals that are going to allow you to repair your home or travel. And so our clients have the opportunity to do financial social work if they choose. We are grant funded, so we're obviously collecting data right? We're assessing people when they come into a match. We're doing a qualitative research, evaluation of our matches. And like I said, if you look at all of these steps and you look at those 64 programs around the country, they are following similar steps. This is really what a best practice model looks like. Questions?
Yeah, thank you for saying that you're grant funded, because I was wondering if some of the rent went to pay for all these meetings, and the answer is no.
No, we charge a sliding fee scale fee to the home provider at the time of matching. If they are a low income home provider, so their income is under 16,000 a year, that fee is $10. I think if their income is under 25,000, that fee is $60. So we are not surviving by fees.
And the renter or the person who joins this household, do they have sort of a deposit due as well? They might be tight on cash as well. So what's the expectation there?
So those are things that we talk about with our home providers, right? Some of them really want a deposit. And sometimes even as an organization, we've stepped in and helped with that. Because most of the people who are coming into this program to home share, the number one reason they're doing it is economics. And so, yes, we encourage people to not do a deposit, not charge for the trial match. Sometimes they are really digging their heels about that. So we have conversations or we support that maybe financially. But most of our folks don't charge a deposit, and they don't charge for the trial match.
Other questions?
Sure.
Allison, this is Denny Sloan. I had a chance to talk with Kathy and the other two ladies on Saturday, and I was really impressed with them. But one of the things that was really striking is most of the people at Celebration of Minds were students, and we didn't have too many senior folks. But Becky said that they had 50 matches in Denver already. And so do you have an average age span? Because I was just in thinking about this today, it occurs to me that there may be some optimal age span, like people get into their 90s, they may be too old because they think about getting.
No, so I will tell you that, which is that our next slide? No, that's not our next slide. Hold on. No, that's not our next slide. So every single match is different, right? There is nothing that is the same about any of those matches. So about a third of our homeowners are in their 90s. And when you start to getting into matches with people in their 90s, the service exchange starts to go up, right? That's where we're talking probably zero rent or $100, and maybe there's a couple meals a week and rides to doctor's appointments. And the way that the rent goes down in our program is the more that somebody helps with, the more the rent goes down. And so when somebody comes in, if they would say to us, I just can't help with anything. I'm older myself and I don't want to cook and I just can't do anything, then the rent's going to be higher, right? And so it's one of those things that we're always talking to people about what is really realistic, right? If you come in and you're like, I can't help with anything and I only want to pay $200 a month, that's all I can afford, the chances of us being able to find someone who's only charging $200 and doesn't need help is probably pretty minimal. So a lot of what we do when we're in the community and we're talking to social workers is kind of educating them about what this program is and what it isn't. It isn't a program that works well for people who are homeless, right? If you are actively homeless and you are in the stress that comes from being homeless, the chances that you could really enter into a healthy home sharing relationship that takes communication and the ability to negotiate isn't there. So if somebody is staying with friends, or they are at a shelter and they have a roof over their head and they're going to work every day, great transition, right? That could be an optimal transition. And so part of what we are often talking to people about is, this isn't a solution that's going to work for everybody for everything, right?
So Allison, it was a surprise to me to hear you say that maybe a third of the seniors in the home share program are 90 or older. What would you say would be the average, and maybe the standard deviation? Does it reach down into the
76?
76.
Mm-hmm. I would say 70s, mid to upper 70s would be if we were going to average it all out. Yes, I would probably, which I probably should pull all that data. That's a really good statistic to have on hand. And like I said, so I always say the homeowner is the one who's driving the bus, right? Because they are going to come in, and sometimes they're like, I want someone closer to my own age. I really want someone, I love to hike, and I'd love to have someone that wants to go hiking or go to movies or do things socially or go out to dinner, right? So they're coming in and they know that they want someone who's active and busy, and that's what they're looking for. Sometimes we get people who come in and they're like, I love young energy, right? We have several matches with 20 somethings to early 30 somethings, and they're like, I want to help somebody get on their feet, right? I want to be part of the solution. I love young energy, which if you think about what we would be looking at in Golden, right? We would be looking for a lot of those people who are like, having a student for a year or two would be great. I could help them not have to take out so much student loan debt, and I get to be part of that solution, right? Other people would be like, I don't really want a 30-year-old. What if they're partying? What if, it just kind of depends. So people come in with and sometimes we like might get someone who comes in that doesn't meet all of their buckets, right? Because that dream person probably is not there. Maybe they come with a dog, or maybe they're a little older than they thought. So we will call them and tell them about someone, but usually people kind of have an idea. I mean, my favorite's when the 90-year-olds are like, I want someone close to my own age. And we're like, you want to live with another 90-year-old? And they're like, well, 60. And I'm like, 60 is not 90, right? But that idea that I don't want to be with a kid, I want to be with someone who is a little bit older, but that's a whole generation. So this slide just talks about the benefits. It really, like I said, it's win-win. We did focus groups when we first started, and I had a room full of home providers, most of them 70s, early 80s. And, my geriatric social worker brain, because when we start talking about our 90-year-olds, home sharing is only a piece of what they need. And that is why our master's level geriatric social workers are so important, because they are evaluating for dementia. They are also looking at, do we need to get in Meals on Wheels? Do they need bathing and dressing, right? Where is the family? Sometimes the families call us and what they want is out. And we're like, you don't get to be out, right? Because this person coming in may do 10 hours a week of support. Your mom needs a lot more, right? So those are also conversations that we have to have with people about what's really realistic to expect from someone coming in. But it is, so we're doing this focus group. I've got that lens. What is the homeowner going to get? And they were the ones that looked at me and said, Allison, I get to give back, right? I get to be part of, I may not be able to volunteer anymore. I may not be as active as I used to be, but I can share my home and give back, right? And so what we have learned is it doesn't matter how great the rent, it doesn't matter how great the space, it doesn't matter how great the location. If the people aren't right and it doesn't feel like a win-win, no match is going to work. And that's why we put so much energy into trying to get to that goodness of fit match. Any other questions?
I was curious, who funds the grants?
So I was going to say, I think we've got that. I think we've got that at the end. A lot of our funding comes from the city and county of Denver. That is actually, they pay for our financial social work. We get Office of Hope. Truthfully, we just made a match in Golden. Until pretty recently, we haven't gone that far up the hill because we have tried many times to get Jefferson County CDBG dollars and we just got shut down. Like, I've given up on that. So we do get a little bit of money from the city of Wheat Ridge. We have gotten money from Arvada. But it's really only recently we've gotten a couple of home providers from Golden. And I said to my team, what do you think? And they're like, let's do it. But because of the distance, right, we've just haven't. And again, for us, it's where we funded. We do serve the entire metro area. We have a grant from the Colorado Health Foundation and funding from the United Way. And that funding is kind of what allows us to do our work outside of the Denver metro area. That's what those grants were billed for. But we do rely a lot on that CDBG dollars for funding for our social work time. We were very, very fortunate to work with a doc from CU Anschutz and the VA. And we actually did a national home share research study. It was so cool. That was actually, I mean, you all are research professors, so this is probably like so familiar for you, but to like be in the IRB and actually we are going to be published. And so for me, just kind of going through the whole process and the interview and the editing, and it was just a really fun opportunity. Some of the data that came from that research study is that the average home share match is about 2 years, which is why we are always talking to people about Plan B, right? We know, and like I said, we have some matches that have been going since we've almost started, but people move, graduate students graduate, right? That is just what happens. So certainly talking with people, someone's health with the 90-year-olds, it is not an unusual question for people to go, what happens if they die, right? So we have to talk about that stuff. But the average length is about 2 years. The average rent saved is about $1,000 to $1,400 a month, right? So you're saving $12,000 in rent, right? Just by sharing a home. The average time is 8 weeks. We talked about that. And the average service exchange, the home provider, between if they didn't have to pay for lawn mowing or bathing or dressing or, you know, any of those kind of service exchange things. And again, what we call ADLs. So the bathing and dressing is not something that would be provided in our program. But what we find is if they are now earning $500 a month, they now have that money that they could use to pay for someone to come and do some of that stuff. So you're talking about an economic value of about $18,304 to the home provider by sharing their home. That's huge without working, right? Being able to earn that income without working. These are just some of our match pictures. Like I said, every single match is different, right? None of them are the same. Well, the social, what Deborah, who you all met, she was so frustrated. She was going to do a living together contract, and she's like, there's just no formula for this. And I'm like, there is no formula, right? A match with two people who are in their 60s is very different than a match with someone who's 90 and someone who's 60 versus someone who's 80 and someone who's 30. I mean, they're just different. So there is no formula. There are things that we have learned. We have learned that we have to talk about stuff. We have learned that if someone brings in too much stuff or decides to empty a storage unit, that all hell breaks loose, right? There are things that we have learned to make the process better, but people are people and they're all different. So it just, no two matches are the same. And then these are some of our funders. And we've been having office space with the Dominican Home Health, but we're moving at the end of the month. And yeah.
All right, Allison, thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording. I have no idea if my computer is